Hello everyone and welcome to my guide for the Halls of the Dead and Path of Exile. I have been about 2,000 ranking since day 4, and since then I've gone through about 3,000 coins. So hopefully we can help you out with a few of the strategies that I've used and found a lot of success with. Upon arriving in the Halls of the Dead, we'll need to stock up on some silver coins first, as each round takes 1 silver coin from you. Once we head southeast and go to the doorway, we get to begin our tournament. You'll be presented with a screen that looks something similar to this, though your rewards and your favors may vary. The matches screen is where we're going to be using a lot of the favors that is presented to us to figure out what units we're going to get next and how we can build our team around them. Now that we know how to get favor, we can spend that favor by going to the corresponding vendor and control clicking them so that it opens up a menu. The menu will let you browse from different units or equipment or various things to further bolster our team. Once you've selected your reward and the favors that you'd like to go for your upcoming units, you'll be presented with a screen that looks like this. This will be your field screen. There's a lot going on here, so let's break it down roll by roll in some of the units that I've found to be the best in those positions. First up is our attacker's role. The attacker is a very versatile slot on the field, as it can both attack and defend. Let's talk about some of the units that are a standout on attack. In the attack slot, we have the ability to attack and defend at the same time. Spear dancers are fantastic. I'm sure all of you guys have been one-shot by this thing by now. When the match initially starts, the spear dancer will use its gap closer to close into their attackers, which causes their team to funnel in towards the middle and away from the flanks. The spear dancer is also incredibly evasive. It can hold the front line long enough for your other area-dominating attackers like the Caldera Ravager or the Jade Hulk to get in and really start putting down some damage and hold that aggro while you flank. Speaking of flankers, that's going to be the next role we talk about. Flankers go on the south and north side of the field, and they predominantly take this path assuming that it's uninterrupted. Flankers are awesome for high damage, high mobility, low health characters that can get in and really wipe out those totems. Let's take a look at a couple units that really stand out in this flanker role. Up first is the Thunderbird. The Thunderbird is absolutely nuts. So not only does it get a teleport that completely bypasses all midfield combat so it doesn't get caught up, but its damage is also incredible. It's a good thing that we lured everybody mid first because their health is not very high, so they will need a little bit of protecting. Up next, let's look at the Fieldmaster. The Fieldmaster is amazing on flank because they can create walls, and the walls tend to trigger the AI into either attacking the wall or full-on blocking projectiles for you and your team. Next up, let's talk about the Escort role. The Escort role is the high-risk, high-reward playstyle that comes in the Halls of the Dead. You get 4 slots, and you can slot any unit in there, and any unit will behave roughly the same as they are in Escort. The main advantages to having Escort full is that assuming that you don't die, they will follow you all the way to their flank, to the back, to the top, or whatever. The Escorts can also be commanded in a sense to say, so that if you are clicking on a totem and you're holding it and your escorts then start to channel, you can remove your channel and they will continue channeling. This lets you do things like using your escorts to channel specific totems as you switch yourself to a different totem to deny a resurrection from the enemy. The only bad thing with escorts is if you die, the escorts will run back to your main base and stand right on top of your tower doing essentially nothing. Now that we know that the impact that Escort can have on the battlefield, let's talk about a few units that are ridiculous in the role. First up is the Sunset Sage. The Sunset Sage is amazing on Escort because unlike any other unit in the Halls of the Dead, the Sunset Sage can channel from a distance. Also, because of the way that the AI works, the Sunset Sage generally doesn't need you to hold click on a totem before it starts channeling itself, making it incredibly potent for rushdown compositions, as the Sunset Sage does not get distracted by melee combat in front of it and will continue to channel the totem, turning the battle in your favor. Up next, we have the Fieldmaster, and just as good as it was on flank, it's just as good on Escort, giving you the same power of the walls with a little bit more control on where the walls are going to be. Up next, we have one of my personal favorites, Hinakora's Horn. This unit is awesome because it's got a big purple AoE that it displays around it, and it can deny or delay enemy revivals. Because the way that the revival time is in Halls of the Dead is a little too fast, so anything we can do to mitigate that's going to be A plus for our winning. Next up, we have the Defender role. The Defender role is going to be your bastion of whether or not you win the race or lose the race. The defenders will never progress past the attacker point and will only defend totems for the most part if they're being channeled on. Having defenders that can routinely and consistently interrupt the enemy team from your totems is extremely important. Let's talk about some of the units that do that the best. First up, we have the Tidecaller. The Tidecaller sends out a huge crashing wave that interrupts and pushes back all enemies that it comes in contact with. When you equip it with the Sunblot Band, it becomes even more ridiculous and shoots out a huge arc, kind of like a GMP of waves, and full-on denies the entire field repeatedly. Next up, we have the Spearfisher. The Spearfisher is amazing because it's got very good attack speed, but also it has a slowing component with the net that it throws, meaning that when it gets knocked back by the Tidecaller, it can take a long time for them to get back to your totems if they don't get caught up in melee in the meantime. Once again, we have Hinakora's Horn, but this time on defense. So just as the AoE would prevent revives, this time it speeds up revives as well. So if your units ever get caught in a Death Chaos AoE, or end up in an unfortunate circumstance to where they just get nuked out, this is going to bring them right back real fast so that you can stay in the race. Oftentimes you're going to find yourself with not quite enough favor to get one of the priority units you want. That's where buying equipment or buying other low tier units from other vendors and then selling them to the vendor that you're just a little shy on can really help push you forward. Being able to take out the monsters with your own damage is a huge boon to your clear speed and overall success, but it's not necessarily mandatory. Here's a clip of a white one-link bow with no quiver doing a max rating Halls of the Dead. The way that I did it was just by distracting the enemies so that they weren't attacking my own guys, and then helping them channel down the totems to race. If you're having an issue with who to kill first, the biggest thing is going to be asking yourself if you're a projectile-based build or not. If you are a projectile-based build, probably Kahu is the first one to kill, as later on in the rounds he can have an extreme amount of proximity shields, which are more than obnoxious to deal with. Anyways, I hope this helps you out. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to hit me up in-game.